What's important is that all of the women got makeovers.
No.
That was the takeaway.
That's not important.
Hello, everybody. I'm Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching American Crime Story, Impeachment, or Impeachment, American Crime Story, Episode 10, The Wilderness. Yeah. On today's episode, we got to the impeachment.
Yeah, it was...
the titular role.
Literally nothing.
Which commentary?
Yeah, I mean...
No, the kind of, for a minute, like the whole time I was watching this, I was like, we haven't even gotten to the fucking impeachment. Yeah. And then I was like, because it's not about the impeachment.
It's not about the impeachment. And that's the thing that when I was telling you towards the beginning about that other podcast I was listening to, it's like, that was one of the things that and I think I mentioned it in a previous episode, but that's one of the things that they were talking about, where they were like, so many of these congressmen and senators were like, well, we just want him to have like a slap on the wrist. We don't want to like impeach. And everybody was like, that's what you're voting about. That's the point.
They wanted to formally. That's all it was.
Yeah. Well, then like Ann Coulter kept calling him a felon. And I'm like, all right.
So my MVPs were Ann Coulter and Sue. I wanted.
Susie?
No, Sue.
Who's Sue?
I thought that was her name. Linda's cube mate.
Oh, it might have been Sue. I don't think I literally ever caught her name.
really wanted her to have a like twisting of the knife moment.
Yeah.
She didn't get it. However, she was sort of an omnipresence. Yeah. She was in every episode, including...
Well, and she was in this episode, but like feeling bad for Monica.
Sympathetic to Monica. And it was a very, very efficient usage of that character in a way that...
Oh, yeah, Susan. Yeah.
Everybody was in this episode. They brought everybody out in a way that I really appreciated.
Here's the thing for me is like, I thought he was great and I love him so much, but like Billy Eichner's Matt Drudge was like inconsequential to me for the most part.
I mean, sure. I
know that real life Matt Drudge was like more important, but like they did not really.
I was going to say more inconsequential.
Well,
I think it was a commentary on the society, on the changing media.
Yeah. His show looked bad.
I mean,
like even by Fox News standards, it looked bad. Like I used to have to watch like Business Brunch or whatever, Fox and Friends shit, where they talked about like business numbers in the morning and then like Neil Cavuto
at night. So Fox News is kind of it's a whole thing on its own. Like
I had a job where that was unfortunately my job. I want that on the record and clear. Okay.
I don't know. You might have piqued a couple people's.
No, it was not my decision.
No, Fox News has its own trajectory. In a way that, again, I find fascinating because they're literally shaping history.
Yeah, it's horrible.
I did like Bombshell, but I was like, one day I wouldn't hate watching a dramatization sort of charting the rise and fall and rise again type.
And the thing about Bombshell that we both responded to so strongly is that it was about the women and how that operated within. But like an actual historical, like a the Post or the newsroom style thing about
no, because Fox News is literally, it is an entertainment channel. That's how they've gotten out of legal issues, is that they're not a news channel. They say that themselves. Yeah. And
apparently they just let Ann Coulter drink wine on air.
But like, because going back to Bombshell, I mean, the Kate McKinnon, it's like half of the people that work there, it's just a good gig.
It's just a job.
They don't subscribe to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Every single one of those motherfuckers is vaccinated. Like they're selling a product and the product is making the world worse. But that's
dangerous. Not what's for talking about right now.
To pivot back in, I remember specific footage of, I thought it was Ann Coulter and Rush Limbaugh. It might have been Matt Drudge, but I think they tried to do sort of like comedy news, like the Daily Show type thing, and it just didn't work because
it's not funny.
Conservative ideals don't lend themselves to that type of commentary.
Exactly,
they're incompatible. Which is like, I mean. I really appreciated this episode. I liked the series as a whole.
Me too.
It came across a little bit more, I almost said like slice of life, like cinema. With him, The People versus OJ, there was sort of like let's revisit this moment in time, this moment in history, and sort of let's give, in particular, Marcia Cross a fair, like,
like a fair representation.
Yeah, like it recontextualized a lot of stuff. And what I found sort of interesting about this is I didn't find that it had any big grand thesis statement other than the women.
Yeah.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, we started with these women. We ended with these women. We have, Paula Jones, Monica Lewinsky, Hillary Clinton, and Linda Tripp, and sort of how their actions and also the actions of those around them had such consequences on
globally
their lives and the course of history, and sort of then ultimately they were left to clean up the mess themselves, and it
specifically Hillary Clinton
and Paula Jones.
Yeah.
I mean, but she was an island alone.
That scene where they were being juxtaposed against each other and they were both having their photos taken, but
both were equally as uncomfortable, or both, I don't know, but equally, but both uncomfortable.
Yeah, but Hillary was being photographed by Annie Leibovitz, one of the most talented celebrity photographers ever. And Paula Jones was being photographed by Penthouse because she can't afford her lawyers. And clearly someone screwed up when they were setting up her legal fund.
Or they didn't care.
And she's in trouble now.
Susie was disgusting.
So horrible.
Susie, oh, God.
So horrible.
She had her number. She had it to call her, to yell at her.
Yeah.
But not to continue to help her or whatnot.
And look, I don't think there's anything shameful about posing for a magazine. I wish it would Playboy, but Penthouse is fine.
There is a line in the sand. Yeah. There is a chasm between those two things that on the surface seem like they are not.
But then it's also not Hustler. So we're in a middle ground.
It was an elephant in a room for me telling this story. I was like, how do you tell this story in a modern...
through the modern lens?
Yeah, but it's the Hillary Clinton of it all.
Oh, okay.
It's how do you... Who is the good guy? Who's the bad guy? And they didn't really draw lines. Yeah. I mean, we talked in a week or two ago that a lot of times it depends on who's on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
The good and badness of it is subjective depending on, what's happening. And so it's they did a very good job of depicting Hillary, and it's all things are not equal, and it's it goes to show you how people, because the whole juxtaposition of Hillary and Paula Jones, it's there's a huge class issue, because it's Hillary has the money, she has the profile and all that,
the status,
that this is what her experience, it basically, this whole thing sort of offered her opportunity.
Yeah.
In a way that for Paula Jones, the exact same thing really struck her down.
Yeah. Well, and they even made multiple comments in this episode about how Hillary's poll numbers had never been higher. This is the most popular she ever was. She could have gotten almost anything done if she had been.
Well, and again,
she got asked to be senator while this was happening.
A lot of people like to make, 1-1 comparisons where it was because Hillary benefited from a system in which Paula Jones didn't, that makes Hillary bad.
No. And
this show didn't really do that. And I appreciated that. And I try to resist the urge to oversimplify everything, which is what everybody does, especially, going back to the Fox News of it all. It's you would think a 24-hour news channel could actually delve into the nuance of this stuff. But no, it just means that we have 24 hours of 7-minute news blurbs.
Yeah. The point of Fox News is to make people dumber.
Well, I meant 24 hours news in general. It's we're not actually.
Well, yeah.
We're not actually delving deep. We're not doing long form investigative journalism here.
Sure.
It's just more hours of wild, rampant speculation.
Yeah, of course. Seeing Bob Schieffer and Dan Rather. Dan Rather's still alive, but I think Bob Schieffer died.
Mm-hmm.
That was so nice. I love them both so much. I love Dan Rather. He still pops off sometimes on Twitter, and it is fun when he has a minute.
And I think, I think Paula Jones, Will said something while we were watching it. He was like, if there's anybody in this show that I actually kind of feel bad for, it is her.
I feel bad for a number of the people. I feel the worst for Paula Jones because this effectively ruined her life. I think she's okay now, but it effectively ruined her life in the same way that for 20 years, it ruined her 14 years or whenever Monica Lewinsky put out that TED Talk, it ruined her life too. You can see the moment in this episode, and it's when the Starr Report gets released. That's when she realizes she's never getting married. She's never going to get married. No one is ever going to because that woman on the television in the one scene was could you imagine if your son was I'm going to marry Monica Lewinsky? I think that it was in that moment that she realized.
So, I mean, she's also not dead yet. But
she's not dead yet, but
the American dream of the family is not going to play out in the way that she anticipated.
Sure. She is extremely pushing the edges of fertility, unfortunately. If anybody should have a kid, it's probably Monica Lewinsky.
I loved the moment that her friend showed up.
I know.
The total and utter change in demeanor and attitude. It's like that's a factor I never really thought to consider.
Yeah.
That maybe half of Monica's problem was trying to exist so far outside of her social.
She was and she was so isolated even as a White House intern. It doesn't appear that she made close friends within the interns.
She didn't have any peers.
Yeah, she was isolated from her friends and family in DC. She didn't make new friends. And so this relationship and then her friendship with Linda Tripp were like her only outlet.
But even once shit hit the fan and dealing with her parents, it's like, I mean, her parents, were there for her and pulled through in immaculate ways. But it is, again, your parents. Yeah. It's not a peer. It's not that sort of. And so you get the sense that it's like, maybe if she actually had a handful of girlfriends and not Linda Tripp, this whole thing would have gone down differently.
Oh, yeah.
And the single most unforgivable thing about Linda Tripp is, I suppose, the delusion, because especially in this episode, I kept trying to feel empathy for her. I kept trying to feel bad for her. And it was the moment when she's talking to the reporter from George Magazine where she's just sort of, you can see the realization that she's done something wrong.
Yeah.
And then she just insists, she still doubles down. She still insists that somehow she was doing Monica a favor.
Well,
somehow she was helping Monica.
She understands intellectually that it was maybe mean and wrong. But it's like she's got that notion in a box and she's like, can't open that.
And I can't handle an adult, a grown functioning adult that cannot,
much older than Monica,
that cannot look inside.
Yeah.
That cannot take a step back once. I mean, we're not talking about, sleeping at night. I mean, we're talking about the entire world is telling you how terrible you are. And you can't possibly be, is it me?
Am I the
drama? Maybe I am. Like, it's just lost on her.
Yeah.
And we got the closest thing to a motive in this episode, which, fine. It was illuminating. It's sort of that thing that I like to say a lot of times where I'm like, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation.
Sure.
And I feel like I kind of called it a little bit with, I was like, I feel like Allison's presence in this was a little baffling. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the closest that Linda had to counsel.
Sure.
Was her put upon teenage daughter.
Again, not a peer. Yeah.
And that's sort of what I mean, where I was like, I think maybe the moral or the lesson of this show may not be immediately apparent.
Mm-hmm.
Or it may not be one clear cut.
Yeah, that's the thing, though, for me, is there is that moment when she tells her daughter about her dad and how her dad was a liar and a cheater and he'd been fooling around all over the county and everyone knew it except for Linda and her mother. And she was like, the reason, or her excuse somehow was, I didn't want you to see that and think, oh, well, liars have great lives or something like that. And I'm like, cool. But there's a difference between lying about having potentially multiple families and like keeping a secret that would not be detrimental to the world at large for your good friend. You know what I mean? Like those two things are different.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, because that's the thing too, is like, and again, I understand perjury is a crime. It is technically a felony. So technically, yes, Bill Clinton is a felon. I can't categorize it like in that sense. But if Linda had also lied, none of this would have. If Linda had also signed this like affidavit that was like, nope, I don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
And no one would have been any the wiser. And then we would have never had all of this stuff out in the open about the president's personal life. The world knows about the cigar. Like, that's
to the point where it's part of the costume, the Halloween costume.
Like, that sucks.
It's not just an asterisk.
No, that sucks.
Which is why I said boldly what I said last week, was I was like, can we stop? Like, can we start acknowledging the power move that it is?
Sure.
Like,
I never said it wasn't iconic. No. I said I was worried about my health.
I'm just saying it was so lascivious that I was like, I mean,
like everybody said. That's the thing, especially And it goes back to a couple of weeks ago when you were like, everyone's fucking stupid. That is the thing, especially, that makes me absolutely furious, is the notion that like blowjobs and, you know, some fingering and what have you was like so lurid and just like dirty. And I'm just like, no, I can't get on board with that, because it's not lurid and dirty. The most lurid thing is the cigar. And if that's the weirdest thing someone has stuck inside another person, I don't believe you.
Well, and again, the other lurid thing is the deception.
Yeah.
It's like the...
But that's the thing, too. It's like all of the polling numbers and everything that they talked about. It was like nobody cared about the cheating.
That was so beautiful, the ineptitude of the Starr investigation, that they so grossly overplayed their hand.
Yeah.
That people, they weren't like mad at Bill Clinton. They were mostly just like shocked and disgusted.
Yeah.
Like, and it, oh God, I think was so, so brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monica did get that apology, and also there was a moment that there was a handful of moments in this, especially knowing that real Monica Lewinsky was a producer.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like there was a slight bow on it in that
Sure.
point. And there's a point in here where Monica was like, I need to apologize to Hillary and Chelsea.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I feel like that came from Monica through this.
I'm sure she did want to apologize. I mean, that's the thing, is like, I don't think that I'm sure some people, but the majority of people who get caught having an affair with a married person, I'm sure, are very sorry to the married person's family.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I just like, but she was under a gag order. And so her lawyers were like, you cannot say anything. And she was like, seemed distraught about it. She was like, I need them to know that I'm sorry. And it's just like, ugh.
Or even the end with like the reporter asking Linda Tripp if she's ever apologized to Monica. And she's like, that wouldn't be welcome. It probably wouldn't be welcome, and certainly not initially.
No.
But I just very strongly believe that it's never too late to say sorry.
Yeah.
It's never too late. And that's the closest I'll get to actually finding Linda Tripp fascinating in this. Because I also think the production overplayed their hand just a little bit with Linda. And I don't know that that was a fault on their part because of the source material. But it's like, you get these senses of cracking the surface, like just almost scratching, getting through. And then, I found Lucianne to be kind of a strange presence. I understand the whole, like, Linda was trying to get a book, and that's where this friendship came from. And yeah, Linda was sort of, you know, nationally, globally reviled by the end, but she still had these powerful friends that like bought her plastic surgery, which is like, both like, aw, and at the same time, it's like,
because it also felt very like the Paula Jones getting the nose job and everything. Here's my issue with Linda Tripp is, even in this episode, after all of this, everyone in the world, the country specifically, hates her, thinks she did a despicable thing. She 100% did. She is still trying to get her job at the Pentagon back. The job she hated at the Pentagon. Go work anywhere else. Find a job in the private sector. It pays better.
Christmas shop, but
unbelievable.
Then the Clintons will be able to kill her, so I don't know.
She is really, like, the whole time, she was really just convinced they were gonna off her. I don't get it.
I was curious how the show was going to end, and I did appreciate this ending, especially ending on the note of Monica so completely overwhelmed and very much out of her element, but sort of like, I'm literally saying the words, I'm going to be okay. Like, I just need a minute. I'm going to be okay. I think that's sort of like, I think it would be disingenuous if we like fast forwarded to the present and or did some montage while Hallelujah plays, you know, of like.
Look, it's a lovely song. If I never heard it again in a piece of media, it would be too soon.
But it's like, because again, these people, most of these people are still very much alive. So it's like, you can't put too much of a button on the end of it. And so I think all in all, the show was more interesting than it was necessarily excellent or groundbreaking or like, because I did appreciate the dramatization and my biggest takeaway was contextualization.
Sure.
Just contextualized a lot of stuff for me.
I also think it's difficult to recapture the lightning in a bottle that was the People
OJ
versus OJ, because that one was so out of left field, especially for Ryan Murphy. And it was so interesting. And the like Marcia Cross of it all was like obviously the best part.
Well, and I didn't like the way Versace was structured, but it was good.
Yeah.
And it does have one of my favorite sort of like ending beats in a show in general, which is because you never did watch it, but it's Penelope Cruz.
Spoilers.
No.
Oh, okay.
They depict Donatella as kind of a piece of work. And she I don't think, based on that show, I don't think she made all the right moves.
Okay.
And so there's the final shot, and it's of sort of like Penelope's Donatella looking into the mirror and sort of like contemplating her existence, her reflection. But the mirror is embossed with the Versace Medusa logo. So she's distorted.
Okay.
And I think that was that's the kind of thing that Versace was good
Sure.
for.
Okay.
Like I said, this was more kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
I did want to ask, do you think, do you have any thoughts on award season, on who could be coming out of this?
So if I were choosing, it would be Beanie and Annaleigh Ashford. I think it's going to, and Kobe.
Sarah will be nominated. I don't think she.
So that's my thing is
this was too much.
What I think is going to happen is Sarah and Clive Owen.
Yeah. I mean, of course, but Clive was good, but that's not, it feels, Bill Clinton isn't the point of, like, that feels like completely missing.
I mean, he did a really good Bill Clinton, but
he managed to keep it this side of cartoon,
like a caricature for sure. Yeah, so I would prefer if it was like only women, but I feel like they're gonna put Bill in there for an Emmy for sure.
Yeah, I think Annaleigh, I don't think she'll win. I don't think it's like... I'm not sure anybody is I don't think anything's really going to win. Because this was good and it was well received, but it didn't change the game the way that, like you mentioned, OJ kind of did.
Yeah.
I kind of want it to keep going. Like, I kind of want to... I want to go into the Bush administration next. Yeah, and I kind of just want to watch the last 25 years dramatized with, like... I mentioned while we were watching, but Edie Falco's Hillary, I really warmed up to her, ironically.
Even my husband was like, well, they finally let her be in the show. And that's true. That would be funny if like, because even Ann Coulter made a comment in this episode where she was like, instead we're running the stupidest Bush for president. And so it's like, I would love that.
Well, and
again, we should do
this isn't
fill this void. We should watch Recount.
Oh,
Danny Strong wrote it. It's good.
Which one who was?
I think Laura Dern.
Okay.
She's the voter lady from Florida is Laura Dern.
Well, because I was going to say, and not in defense of Ann Coulter, but to contextualize, Ann Coulter also wasn't, she didn't go down this Trump thing either. Like she wasn't one of these Trump lackeys. She thought he was gross too. So, I mean, she does at least stick to her own repugnant moral code.
Yeah.
But,
we might not be able to do Recount.
Who's
Kevin Spacey? Never mind.
We're getting to a point where it's just like, I mean, everybody's problematic. What are we going to talk about?
We can address the thing at the very beginning and then move on.
So, did you have anything else that you wanted to?
No, I really enjoyed it. I mean, there are like a couple of absolutely repulsive characters, but I loved that just stranger in the elevator telling Linda that she did a horrendous thing. Or he wasn't horrendous. He used a better word than that, but it was good.
It was.
Yeah.
And she did deserve it. But there was a part for me where I was sort of like, okay, guy, you got her. This is your moment. And she's dealing with that.
Yeah.
Nonstop. Like constantly.
So again, is Monica.
I'm not arguing that she doesn't deserve it, but there was a part of me that was sort of like, let the lady go to her hotel room.
Yeah.
He was interesting. I liked that. I was more judgy of the front desk man because I'm like, it's not your job.
The security guy?
Yeah. I'm like, it's your job to do your job. Like, it's not your job to shame the people. And I'm not arguing whether or not they deserve it.
But
I'm
again,
arguing.
she was like huffy because he asked her to sign in and present her ID, which is what everybody has to do. So whatever.
Don't you know who I am?
Yeah. I mean, at least she didn't say that, but still.
Didn't she? It was all
over her face, but.
Watch this space maybe for, they're doing Studio 54. Did Katrina end up getting like shelved?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
I think Studio 54 is coming in, I don't know, 2 years.
5, 6.
Yeah.
Sometime down the line. We do, though, mostly cater to all of the Ryan Murphy properties. So
for better or worse.
For better and
worse.
Yeah, so I mean, stick around because whatever the next Ryan Murphy thing is, we will probably take a peek at it. So, well, you can follow us on Twitter at soimwatching, Instagram at soimwatching the show. We've got a Patreon, Cashapp, Venmo, coffee. Anything helps. Thank you. Bye.